Much for joining us tonight. It's been more than 3 years since the shooting death of an East Texas pastor.
Yeah, and today the state decided not to seek the death penalty in the capital murder trial. KLTV7's Lauren Tier explains why.
24-year-old Maitrez Woolen appeared in Smith County Court for another status hearing. This a few months after he was deemed competent to stand trial after receiving treatment at Vernon State Hospital. The state gave a definitive answer as to whether they would pursue the death penalty in trial.
We informed Mr. Haas a couple weeks ago we did not intend to seek the death penalty. At that time, we did ask him whether or not he was planning to put forth an insanity defense, and he informed us that he did not intend to raise that as well.
Woolen is charged with capital murder. According to Smith County Sheriff Larry Smith, in January of 2021, Woolen was found by Pastor Mark McWilliams hiding in Starville Methodist Church in Winona. McWilliams allegedly drew a handgun on Woolen but was distracted when Woolen turned the gun and it fired, killing the pastor. Also, according to Smith, Woolen then attempted to flee the scene in a stolen truck but was soon after arrested and booked into the Smith County Jail. No pretrial date has been set, but the state says they are reaching out to experts and witnesses at this time. Lauren Tier, KLTV 7 News.
If Woolen is convicted of capital murder and because the state is not pursuing the death penalty, he will face an automatic sentence of life in prison. Again, that is if he's convicted.
Well,